Hey, Mike, how are you? Happy
I'm
Tuesday.
doing well, Bob. It's great to be alive. How are you?
I'm great. It's Tuesday. We're on a SquadCast. It's spring. Um, it's going well. Listen, the world is falling apart, and we're doing our best to keep the water out of the boat.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's going to help.
Well, listen,
I know these are just bizarre times, and every once in a while, every day, something really stupid happens that you can object to, but you can also sort of stand back and go, "Holy crap! How did it come to this?" And every day it's like, "Well, how did it come to this?" And now it's, "How did it come to this?" It's trying.
it is. Um, we are. We're gonna keep going. That's all you can do. That's the world we live in.
Oh no, there are
The,
other
the
things.
world keeps moving, like big changes to our world since we started this podcast two and a half, almost two over 2 years ago, um, and we've talked about it, and I guess we'll probably still talk about it. But Diamond has issues. Diamond issues. This is one of the first things that I immediately keep repeating in terms of our banners. We got information today, finally, of the sale of Diamond Distributors in bankruptcy. Alliance Entertainment is the purchaser. Um, what do you think of that?
Well, I mean they're involved in all sorts of pop culture stuff, and they're really deeply involved in all that. I don't know how they are run as a business because I've never followed it, so I don't know if it's a good idea or not. But then again, I'm not sure what is a good idea with respect to Diamond's assets. Free Comic Book Day, hey, that's pretty cool. I mean, they own a bunch of things. The comics grading service, and that's great. And maybe Alliance can do something with it. And I'd rather see things happen than things stop happening.
So, yeah, I've done a little bit of research on what people know. I will put in the chat so anybody can check out because we highly recommend the reporting from Heidi McDonald at the Beat. She did a great job kind of trying to figure out what Alliance is, but the short version is it seems like it's a company that is definitely in the entertainment space. Um, they are they are probably taking advantage of the access to comic book shops
I would
as
hope.
a venue for some of their other work or their other products. It seems to be a good communicative head in the right place type of company. It doesn't seem to be like this purchase hurts them tremendously financially because essentially they are just kind of increasing some debt. There's not a huge amount of capital that they're expending. The market liked it, increased their market cap significantly today with the news. Um, the only thing we have to be concerned, as you said, is we don't have a lot of information about what they plan on doing with comics and their knowledge of comics and what they have gotten themselves into with
Right.
comics. So
Well, I
hopefully,
mean, by acquiring all that debt, they've upped the ante for themselves. I mean, if they just have their own money or investors' money to buy this stuff, that's one thing. But they're committed to that debt. So
well,
they're
it's
going to have to do some stuff in order to take that money and pay off that debt or some of that debt. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I wish them the best because eventually that rolls down to work for friends of mine and people I like. So
yes. There's
I wish
plenty.
them the best.
We all have plenty of friends who work for Diamond. So yeah, it's a big news day. Hopefully, it's good news. We don't know that it's good or bad or whatever, but we hope it's
I
good.
don't think it's bad news,
It's not
but
bad news. That's fair.
but who knows? It's a good shot. It was
It
bad
doesn't
news
appear to be bad news. I think
when Diamond went down. You know, that's bad news. So
yep.
at least there's a shot.
So there's that. So until we hear more, and obviously this is pending the judge, the court approval, the bankruptcy court approval, but they are the winners. So other news. Hey Bill, welcome for the show. We are there was a bit of comic book news announcement, and so I want to put that up there. This one was interesting, mostly because we talked about it recently. Like last week, we were talking about this character, and there is a new Judge Dredd with John Wagner and Mike Perkins on it, and I think that sounds pretty good.
Well, John Wagner's been around since 1977, right. 78, when Judge Dredd started. Perkins is a swell artist. Dredd is a great character who suffers from the Batman syndrome. He's everywhere, he's everywhere. Actually, that's more the Chicken Man syndrome, but you have to be really old to get that joke. And, I wish him the best. I'm a big fan of both. Wagner's done marvelous work in terms of bringing comics new energy. Back in the late 70s and 80s, he was cornerstone. He is cornerstone to the whole 2000 AD thing, which was a major advance in comics, until First Comics came along.
Right. So absolutely. I really am a big fan of Mike Perkins' art, and I think this works. I think he's got to be, thrilled to the bone to be working on this project this way. And he's a pretty good guy. Yeah.
Well, I would hope. He's a very, very gifted artist, and he's following in the wake of dozens of brilliant artists.
Sure.
Walking onto Dredd is like walking onto Batman with all that heritage of phenomenal artists, except that Dredd, all those artists got squeezed into, 50 years, less than 45 years, and Batman's been around for 80. So, yeah, old Stony Face Bill informs us, and yes, that's true. 2000 AD, former editor Richard Burton, a friend of mine, good man, was the one who turned me on to 2000 AD. He sent me the first 3 issues. And, I loved them. I went nuts. I never read comics like this before. It had some of that sort of Mars Attacks EC Comics vibe, like if I was 12, I wouldn't show it to my parents type of a thing. The idea of somebody doing something that is noteworthy, that Rebellion, which seems to know what to do with their inventory and with their characters, can stand behind. So it's good for all of us.
All right, good. So here's the next piece of information. Let's talk about some new number ones. I'm not going to do the sounds, but I got a new thing here. So we got some slides there. This is a huge week for comic books. If you like comic books, this is the week for you. There are so many new number ones coming out that are really, really interesting and really, really good. There are so many continuing issues that are coming out this week that are all of the best series that are running this week. Like, go empty your piggy bank on your way to the comic shop this week. Yeah, see, exactly. Bill's got it. His wallet's hating him. So yeah, exactly. I want to highlight just a couple of things that are new number ones. This is from Mad Cave, written by Chris Condon, and Jiji Shao. I'm sure I'm murdering that name. I've read this. I read it about an hour ago,
Hmm.
and terrifying, exciting, really, really interesting start to the series.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you and Chris really hate each other, and you're going to get into like big fights, physical fights.
Yeah. So
Next
we're
convention
not.
you're going to be
But
at.
if you go to Ithacon this week, or next week, not this weekend, it's next weekend. But if you go to Ithacon next weekend and you find me, you're probably going to find Chris. Or if you find Chris, you're probably going to find me. I think I'm moderating 3 panels with him over the weekend, and he's really smart, good writer. He was on the show. Go back and check that episode if you want. It's really, really a lot of fun and interesting. But this book, I think you mentioned it in our discussion that it was coming. It is really good. It's got this weird ass King of the Hill vibe, mostly because the kid looks a little bit like Bobby Hill. But it is very, he's setting up some interesting things. Really good.
So you
Also,
liked it.
I did. I will recommend this. I say good.
All right.
This is coming out tomorrow. Tomorrow at the comic shop, you can buy the Harley Quinn Fartacular Silent but Deadly one-shot special.
Is it scratch and sniff?
It's in a bag.
Is it really?
Yes.
Oh God. Okay.
I think it is. I'm not 100% sure. I haven't done the research, but I think it is. It's written by Joanne Starr, who is one of my favorite young writers, and Ted and Rowe did the art. I just can't wait for this. It's going to be so exciting.
I am such a fan of the television show, and I'm so happy that it's in a 4th season. I think it's the 4th season. It is so bizarre, so off the wall, so incredibly X-rated that Ralph Bakshi should be jealous.
I agree with you on that. I mean, and it falls into the Kite Man show as well. That whole universe is great. But this book, I highly recommend it. Go get Harley Quinn Fartacular. It is. I mean, listen. It's a joke. There was a lot of people who got upset about it when it was announced. I don't understand it. It is Harley Quinn. She is a joke. She is entertaining. There are actual aspects to her character that add texture to the world, but at the heart, just like Deadpool, which there's also a Deadpool out April Fool's book coming out this week. They are comic relief. They are entertainment. They are made to make you laugh with your belly. So yeah, this book's coming out, and I highly recommend it. The other one I wanted to talk about was the Peacemaker Presents Vigilante and Eagly double feature, which was featured earlier this or late last year on the show when we talked to both Tim Seeley and Mitch Gerrits, who are the writer and artist on this. And I've been waiting a long time for this book to come out. And
it's autobiographical, isn't it?
Yeah. It is. I mean, obviously, it's also, since this is based on the series, the Peacemaker series, and it's April Fool's Fun. It's actually appropriate that this book comes out and waited, at least until this point to come out. It was announced at New York Comic Con, finally hitting the stands. This thing, I found out about it like a year and a half ago, and I've been waiting for it ever since. So that's coming. We got, I think, one more.
Here's an obscure reference.
Go ahead.
Can they sell Black Label comic books in Canada now?
Could they not sell them before?
Well, isn't there a black label alcohol that probably is no longer being handled in Canada these
Well,
days?
there's some black label stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's interesting. I mean, this probably would do well in Canada. I think, especially. I mean, I don't.
Who knows? I'm
Who
I'm
knows?
just being a sarcastic little political bitch.
Yeah, no, I understand. There's plenty of that. There's plenty of room for that. This book, I'm halfway through it, but I love Bitterroot. I've always loved Bitterroot. From the very first issue. This has got to be, we got to be in 20s, I think, in terms of actual number of issues. For Bitterroot, there's a new arc called The Next Movement. It's set, I think, in the 60s for this series. Have you ever read Bitterroot? Have you ever read any?
No, I have not, and I don't know why, other than the fact that you can't read everything.
Right, sure.
Even if you move your lips, which I'm willing to do, but
so Bitterroot is the brainchild of David Walker, Sanford Green, and Chuck Brown. All fantastic creators, and it is an African American family of monster hunters, essentially, and throughout their generations and across the country, and it is super fun. Originally, I believe Heather Antos was editing it, and subsequently, it is now being edited by Shelley Bond. So we love all these people. Matt Herms does the colors in this issue, and that's new. I don't think Matt was doing their colors prior to this. There've been a few other people, but Bitterroot is definitely one of my favorites. Something I always look forward to, and the fact that it's back is great, and the fact that this book's again, I'm halfway through, but immediately they have the right vibe. It's going well, so it's a bunch of really good new number ones coming out this week.
my initial response to that cover,
Yeah,
is it's like Jack Kirby meets Jim Steranko,
well,
which happened some time ago.
It's an interesting concept because you said those two words, and I had never put that together. But that's a good analogy for Sanford Green.
It is exactly what I'm. And now, okay, I'm a big Kirby fan. I'm a big Steranko fan, and of course, I'm going to look at it like that. But these days in 2025, you don't see people doing as much sort of tribute to Jack and to Jim as I see in that cover. So that cover alone would sell me if it was there at the rack at the comic book store, and I had money or I wanted to steal it.
And this particular arc is based in the 60s, where both of them were at the height of their power. So it fits very well with that. All right. So a couple more things. I know we have a guest coming tonight. Aaron Kuder is going to be on. If you were not aware, he's trying to get in. So I'm coming in earlier, but I think he may be having some video issues, but we'll get him in. We have a couple things I also wanted to get to. One is something that Mike brought to my attention, and you talked to me about a book that's out there. It is the Marvel Comics covers of Jack Kirby Volume 1 hardcover. It was released in February by Dark Horse. So let's talk about that. First of all, it's a good book.
First of all, it's just Jack's covers. I mean, it's a very, very nice presentation. And, Jack's covers are so, I hate using the word iconic because it's so overused, but Jack's middle name, if it weren't King, would be iconic. So the covers are brilliant, and it really shows you the energy and the excitement and the growth of Marvel Comics in the early 1960s, what changed comics. Another thing that changed comics for its time at a time when it really needed it. Some people may be curious as to why it is published by Dark Horse and not by
I am
Marvel.
curious.
Well, I can only give you a theory because I haven't read the contracts,
Aha.
nor have I asked to. But generally speaking, and they do have some sort of contract with the Kirby estates, so generally speaking, these contracts are written so that you get a royalty for every page that the publisher reprints, and that's a certain amount of money. You get a certain percentage of what the publisher licenses out, which is less money, usually, not always, and it saves the publisher some money, and it kind of makes it a little easier for the other publisher because they have a lower operating cost. Everybody's got a lower operating cost than Disney, but few are anywhere near as cheap as Disney. So this stunt, which they've done, both DC and Marvel have been doing quite a bit of in the last year or two. I think this is a stunt that you're going to see more frequently of publishers licensing their stuff out to other publishers so that they don't have to spend as much on the creators, and because that might make the book profitable as opposed to making the numbers not work, which you don't want to do as a publisher because publishing is a fly-by-night industry.
Well, that's a lot. But let's back to the book. Good.
Book good. If you're a Kirby fan, it's not. What are you doing listening to this comics thing? I know people who are not huge Kirby fans. I don't understand them. Sure. I think they eat puppies or something. I don't get that. But these are phenomenal covers, and of course they pick the best for their own cover, that Avengers 4 cover. But everything else, as far as I can tell, is in there. I would love to see a volume of Jack's monster covers that preceded Marvel and continued a little bit, but you see that in this book because some of those covers are just brilliant. If you like monster covers, and I like Kirby monster covers, and many others.
Great, awesome. It sounds fantastic. So it is available on any place you normally would get a book. Came out in February. You can get it on Dark Horse. That's cool. One more thing, we have our guest is here. He's faceless, but we're gonna have a great conversation with Aaron Kuder in just a minute. But I want to, before we get to bring him in, and it's gonna be fun. There's I spend a lot of time, for people who don't know, working as I can with the Hero Initiative. This industry, this medium that I love with all of my heart, is filled with people who, as they get older, have a tough time. People who are unaware, Peter David's been having health issues for a long time. There's been some stuff on social media about it. I saw I saw a GoFundMe today that I kind of wanted to raise some information. I'm going to put the link to a GoFundMe, not for Peter. Peter's nothing against Peter. I know his stuff's been out there, but Mike Barr has been having some problems for a long time, or for a bit, and really could use some help. So I'm going to put the link to the GoFundMe that for Mike Barr in our comments. People of my age, and I've kind of mentioned this. I kind of mentioned my age earlier when I was talking to Mike. People of my age who started reading comics when I did, can't imagine comics without Mike Barr. His Batman and the Outsiders, Camelot 3000, Batman, just were very instrumental in my growth as a comic book reader. And He's having some tough times. So if you're interested, there's a link in our comments. You can go see if you have the ability to help him out.
Mike's work speaks for itself, as does everybody's work. And Mike, from time to time, will speak for himself as well. I don't want to blame the industry for people not having sufficient income in their elderly years to meet hospital expenses and the like, because so many Americans are in that trick bag. So many. And every time it's somebody you know, somebody you work with, somebody you like, somebody you had done conventions with and been to a million lunches with, like Mike, that comes really close. It hits really hard.
Yep.
Last time I had a conversation with Mike was at the premiere of the first Suicide Squad movie.
Oh, really?
At a party that DC threw,
party
threw, right before the screening of the movie.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of that party.
Yeah, and John Ostrander and I were there along with a billion other people, and it was a wonderful, wonderful party. And towards the end there, as we were leaving to go see the movie, Mike and I sort of met up and, did the usual how's it going type of thing, and just got kind of caught up because we hadn't really talked for a few years. And, both of us were getting older, and we both had our own little, they call it Chazarai in Yiddish. And, that kind of puts you in a different mode. You start thinking like, oh my God, my friend is, he's almost as old as I am. I'm older than Bert. So,
right.
You're older Don McGregor is going, I think he has a thunder going on right now too.
Does Don?
So many of us none of us are getting younger. And none of us were prepared for the truth of 21st century medical bills. We're just
in America.
In America, yes. My entire argument only pertains to this country, which I am hoping with all my heart and soul becomes a province of Canada.
Well, listen, there is the concept that if Canada were to become a state in this country, well, it would certainly tip the balance of power.
Well, only if we kept the Constitution the way it is. And I don't see how you can take Canada and keep the Constitution the way it is. I don't know how you do that.
There's that. Right. Let's leave the lunacy to the comic books. To
Ty Templeton, who is beautiful about all this.
Ty
go online, Facebook, whatever, and just follow Ty.
I agree. I'll never disagree with following Ty. I think Ty's fantastic. All right. Thanks everybody for listening to our nonsense. Hopefully it was entertaining. Hopefully it was informational in some respects. We'll do it again. We will be back next week. We have a show next week. But we're going to get to our guest. We have a lot of questions. We want to talk about with our guest, who is a fantastic artist and comic book creator. And we're going to welcome to the show for the first time, Aaron Kuder. Hey, Aaron.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Can you hear us? That sounds great.
I can. And this is actually my favorite portrait right now.
Yes. Well, artists are not always the most technically gifted. No offense, but that's fine.
Aaron, you could have shaved though. Come on.
Actually, what's funnier is that I didn't shave, and really this is a kind of a mixed blessing.
No worries. We're good. I'm so glad to talk that you were able to do this. We kind of talked about this a while. We've been actually going back and forth for quite some time about getting you on the show. I want to, for anybody who's not familiar with Aaron's work, and I just showed you a whole bunch of it, although some of the covers were things he didn't do, and some were just covers. I just tried to incorporate a lot of your stuff in there. And but if somebody looks at your work, the viewer immediately knows that you love comics, right? Like it just pops right out of what they see. Why is it that you love comics?
Well, I think to start off with, comics became like my first childhood friend in a lot of ways. I moved around a lot as a youth, and comics were the go-to person that could be in the back seat with me. They could I could take them to school. I could, they crossed all the borders and stayed with me when I wasn't making friends yet.
Where'd you grow up?
Born in Michigan, lived in Iowa, Michigan again, Philly, Arkansas,
all over
upstate New York, Ithaca, New York in particular.
Well, we should get you at the con.
I've done at the con plenty of times.
Okay.
I think I was talking to somebody about doing the 50th anniversary.
Okay, yeah.
2 years.
Yep, definitely. Yeah. We'll do that. We'll get you there.
Yeah. So Aaron, let me jump in here for a second. Where in Michigan?
Ann Arbor.
Oh.
Yeah.
You see, I am not going to talk about Fragles now. Just not going to do it.
Yeah, my father was a professor, so a lot of the towns that I went to were
sure
university towns. It was
right.
The academic version of a military brat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I want to kind of comment on your what you said there about like being in the back of the car and reading. Like I spent, I think I can concur that was, I spent a lot of my time in the car reading comics. I remember when we went on a trip to look at colleges, and I was in Jersey, we went down south to like North Carolina and Virginia looked at colleges for me. I spent the entire trip in the back of the car reading comics and just looking up and like say, oh, it's raining. I had no idea.
Yep.
It's raining for miles, but I'm knee deep in Legion superheroes.
I missed Rhode Island the one time I drove through it.
Well, it's not hard. You just blink.
Yeah.
It depends which road you're taking. I mean, if you're on I-95, you're going to miss it.
I was 13, so
traffic.
I don't think I was driving.
On I-95, you're going to be stuck in traffic. So.
Yeah. That's true for my drawing too. That's what got me into drawing, was that sense of needing a safe place.
Right.
I like to say that comic book fans are the introverts, the shy kids in a lot of ways, until they meet other comic book fans.
Right.
Yeah, it's what pulls us out of our shells, as it were.
That's why conventions were invented for comic book fans. Now I'm curious. The science fiction conventions back in the 50s, that's where the comic book fandom thing started. And it gave the science fiction fans the heebie-jeebies. They didn't want these comic book people around to lower the temperature of the room. These children, these morons, they're reading comic books. Screw them.
Right, like Pokemon fans are today.
Right. So they so they kicked us all out, and we started up our own conventions. God damn it! And now science fiction people are crashing those. We never threw them out because we're better than them.
Generally
Yeah.
speaking.
So I'll give you that. Like that's a thing. Like I will be at shows and I'll see tons of different types of fans from different types of media and fandoms and all kinds of things, and I don't get it, but I love that they are enjoying that thing, you know. um
You get to
it,
see stuff you don't see otherwise.
well, I mean, I don't really care to see it. I just be glad they have a place to share it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Right.
I agree with that entirely.
I mean, one of the reasons why I used to go to the Pulp show in Chicago every year, it's like this weekend or something, and I can't make it again, is because, there's a comics presence there, but mostly it's guys who are even older than me, which got scary during COVID. And, they got all this old paper stuff going back 100 years, not just pulps, but old magazines and newspapers and whatever. And to realize, I mean, that's the roots of comics. That's American comics roots. And I always walk away from that show or from shows like it having learned something. Except for the time I met Betty Page, but that's a whole different story.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, I gotta make a note. Betty Page. All right. All right. So we were kind of talking about conventions, and I had something that I wanted to talk about, and I never get to follow my line of questioning, so I wanted to talk about it now. There's been it's a couple weeks old, but I want your opinion on it. There was this comment out there about people in the industry having to make a choice between seeking out interior work or going for the 3 C's: covers, commissions, and conventions. What do you feel about that? Hang on, Joe's got a comment. We have to entertain Joe.
Hey, Joey. I love Joey. He's that dude has saved my keister a couple of times.
We all love
Joe. So yeah, well, that was Ryan Otley that made the connection, and other people kind of have made similar comments in the past and stuff like that. Whereas I agree with the sentiment of we should be more focused on telling good stories, and pushing boundaries with those stories. I think. Well, I have other thoughts about what kind of stories we're telling these days, but in particular, there's an argument for any kind of artist. If somebody's just, I put in. Let me frame this better. If I put in an average between, like, let's say 10 to 15 hours a day working on comics, 7 days a week. And a lot of people don't have a frame of mind for what that's like. If I work less than 10 hours a day, I consider it a day off. Hey, Bill. And so the idea that, like, hey, if I could get a job of doing a couple covers a week or something like that, and pay my bills and have weekends and still be able to afford healthcare and have a healthy balance between work and life, I would take that in a heartbeat.
Sure.
But as far as the industry goes, I mean, it's been broken for a long time.
Forever.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an industry I mean, just think about say, like, the funny pages, which is kind of what a lot of people think of when they first think of comics before all the comic book movies came out, and 10, 15 years ago, or probably longer now, 20 years ago, when people thought of comics, they thought Calvin and Hobbes, they thought
Sure, Peanuts.
Peanuts, exactly. And those creators, there was an overwhelming sympathy for those creators because they had to create a comic strip every day. And granted, that is hard work. But here we are in our industry where an artist has to produce, they say on average a page a day.
Right.
I've been doing this for 15 plus years now, and it is not healthy. It is not.
No.
When I worked as an electrician before I got into comics, I'd come home sore, but I was not nearly as broken as I am in my body, in my physical body, as I am these days.
It's a calling.
So if people can find that niche of, my concern is always going to be for people's health and livelihood.
Sure.
So if there's an artist out there that, if they love doing comic panels and that's what makes them happy in life, go for it. If they can't figure out a way to draw interiors all the time and covers are an option, then whatever makes them happy, whatever allows them to pursue life in the happiest fashion possible.
Absolutely.
And my opinion on this topic has always been, this is not a black or white, choose one or the other, zero-sum game. What works for some doesn't work for others. I think that one of the things that, kind of caught my eye about this conversation is that there are pros and cons to each side, and people should be aware of the choices that they're making and what they're gaining and they're losing in each choice.
Yeah, well, and you also very much don't know what those choices are going to be until you're already.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you can change your mind. You can decide on doing different things. There's two aspects to this debate that concern me. The first is that Aaron's absolutely right about storytelling, and it's a very difficult, complicated process. But doing covers, for example, is part of the storytelling process. It's a different part. You're exercising somewhat different muscles, brain muscles. But you're telling a story, and the story is, hey, look, we're cool, buy me, or read me at the very least.
Advertising, yeah.
It's advertising, but it's also part of the story. It sets up the story, the reader's expectations. And as a communicator, as an artist, as a storyteller, that's part of the process. I don't like it when, it's very clear that they're trying to put some sort of superstar on a cover just to sell the book because they don't think they could sell it otherwise. But luckily, we now have Wolverine, and you can just put Wolverine on the cover.
And that's been true my entire comic book reading career.
That's true.
Yeah. Sure.
I think. Well, if you can have the cover tell a story, that's great. But it has been rare that I've been offered covers or I'm doing a cover and the story is even done.
Right.
Sure.
And so much.
That's such a different.
So much
thing.
changes from the time you get a script to the time it's finished. It's drawn out in 20 pages. Actually, I was just going over some of my files because tomorrow's the release of my final issue of Daredevil.
Yep.
And
Great
I was
work,
going,
by the way.
oh, thank you.
I
wasn't fishing there.
That's
fine.
It's been a really great run, and I was a huge fan of the previous run. and you guys really did a great job, taking off after, such a highly acclaimed run.
They killed it. There's no doubt in my mind. But to my point of, I was going over these files, and I was just going over and I was just looking at the old JPEGs of just like each issue, and realizing like every issue there's something that I tweaked from the script to convey it visually in a way that was more comfortable to me ultimately. But whether that was better or not, so that's what's been on my mind about how the process of transferring the story to the final product is a lot more fluid than for me than I think it is for a lot of people. But I tend to make things messy and complicate things a lot.
Well,
So
I had this is the way that these shows normally go is I have a bunch of things I want to talk about and I lay them out ahead of time, and then somebody will prompt that question directly. Like went to the conventions, and now you've prompted like the first question I had for tonight, which I wanted to talk to you about, is like, what's your process when you approach a script? Like you've done, a lot, majority of your career has been interior work, and it's been fantastic. And when you get a script, like how do you do that? Do you read the whole script? Do you just dive in? Do you start thumbnailing out? What's your process?
So ideally,
let's see.
Ideally,
you are presented with an entire script.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. If I'm not presented with an entire script, I'm usually going to try to not read it until I do have an entire script. But I'll go through the script, and it's like when you read any story, the images fill your mind, and so I will kind of blind contour draw while I read, just quickly get out shapes, ideas of what is the first impression of the script to me, like those moments that really captured me in going through the context of the text. Then I'll go through it again and try to more analytically break it down into panels, and that's usually what I'll end up turning in as my roughs. I think I'm one of the very few. I think I don't know how many other artists do this. I think I'm a very small percentage of the population of artists that will actually send in my roughs after I've gone through the script, and I do that to kind of make the circle a little bit smaller.
Sure. I mean, I think that's an interesting concept. Absolutely.
Well,
you got to figure that the editors like it.
I've
never had an editor tell me not to.
I'm sure. Sometimes it can get a little dangerous, though. I remember once Walt Simonson brought in his layouts. And this is in the 70s, and Sal Harrison was the president of DC Comics at the time, and started in comics back in the late 30s. And he was a big fan of Walter's. He recognized Walter's gifts very early on. Well, Walter's layouts were like a chicken who stepped into ink while on speed. They're just all over the place. And Sal literally was trying to determine whether he had the page upside down or not.
Yeah.
I'm trying really hard not to laugh because I can see Walter has no idea what the hell Sal is doing, and I didn't want to screw up the moment. But I totally get it. So it doesn't always work out. But he wasn't the editor. He was the believer, and he knew. Walter said, "I'm inking this. I know what I'm doing," and Sal respected that.
So you do roughs, you turn them in,
Yep.
then what happens?
Occasionally I'll get feedback, about stuff, but then after I go through it that second time, and as I'm starting the process of actually, printing up the pages to draw them, I'll look through it and I'll see a sequence that's just like, that's not the best way to convey the moment of the story, and I'll tweak it. I'll send that back in, and it's running a marathon in inches. I feel like, just if you ever watch like time-lapse videos of artists drawing, and you'll see how they'll go over an area, and then they'll keep coming back to that area, but it's almost like they're working on one section, and they'll just kind of tap dance back into like this little like part of the chin, or the getting the shadow on lips. It's like that with a story. You find the heart of it, and only I know what I can tell as a storyteller. And the best way for me to convey that moment, that impact, that whether it's heartfelt or action based, whether it's something to be more subtle about, more subtle about the moment, so that the reader isn't handed the idea on a silver platter, that they have to like mentally turn the curve in their head to get to that moment in the story. Like, let's see, a good example of this was working in Action Comics with Greg Pak.
Mm-hmm.
And we had just we created Super Bro, or however he's referred to in the echelon. A t-shirt Superman, depowered. He's outed as Clark Kent, and he's hunted by the law, and he's protecting this group, this neighborhood. Kind of brought him back to being a neighborhood superhero. And there's a scene where they're kind of rallying up the troops to protect yourselves, to communicate with your community, and stuff like that. And you just see and Superman, I don't remember what he did in the script. Oftentimes it's the case, but I had him like just kind of take out a picture of his parents that he had in his wallet, and just kind of look at it for a second, and then it totally fit with the mood of the story. But those are the kinds of things, and Craig loved it, so it was all good. But but those are the kind of things that, if you're telling a story, you're telling a story. If you're drawing a cover, that's a different bag, and it's
That's
advertising.
True. It's a different thing entirely. I liked your run on Action quite a lot, but I don't remember that sequence. Are you saying that Superman was carrying his wallet?
He was in blue jeans at the time.
Okay.
Maybe it was just in his earlier in that story, he had gone back to his Clark Kent apartment, and people had rummaged through it and spray painted "Go Home Alien" sort of stuff on it, and he found a picture of him and his and Ma and Pa Kent, and his face was scratched out in it, but he saved the picture, and so he so that was the picture that he had. That was the only thing he saved from his apartment. But.
I want to
remember that part.
That's awesome. I want to talk about kind of segue into this. So Ghost Rider, we had Ed Brisson on a few weeks ago, and I don't think I got a chance to tell him that and talk about it. But when you guys came out with this, I think it was like 2019, if I'm right. At that moment, and this is kind of weird stuff, but Howard Mackey had just kind of started coming back on doing cons and starting to do some more writing and coming back, comics. And I had Howard on a panel. It was a Mutant X panel, which was fantastic. But he was gushing about this book. And has he told you that?
Yeah. No, I don't. I think there's many true-hearted fan out there for that run in Ghost Rider, but I think Howard Mackey was like the number one fan of it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Absolutely. Like he would, his big thing was he doesn't read things after he's left it.
Yeah.
And he picked this up and he loved it.
Oh, it's because the art's so good, you know.
Of course it is. But on that note, you've touched so many characters. You've worked on so many characters at Marvel, DC, and other places. Is there an existing character that you haven't had a good run on that's eluding you? I mean, this is an open solicitation.
Oh, this is an open wound. Is what it is.
Oh, let's hear it. What is that wound?
I have this kind of space opera story in my head for Quasar.
See, that would be fantastic.
And the hardest thing is that, like, he's not a character that people are going to like go into the shops to buy the book of. B, there's so many IPs out there, intellectual property characters out there that are so similar in, like, Captain Marvel has a similar chest emblem and color, like red and blue sort of look. And he's just some random guy in space that a lot of people don't connect with. And on that element, I connect with him very much. A random guy in space that just kind of is an oddball.
Sure. I mean, listen, Darkhawk is a lot of people's very favorite character as well.
Yeah, I love Darkhawk in the 90s. Yeah.
There are characters, even today, that have been around for a long time, but are really underdeveloped. And if they're underdeveloped at that moment that you take over, that somebody new takes over, you have a carte blanche almost.
Yeah.
To make something of this. And that's a hell of a challenge. And it's wonderful to see how many writers and artists can meet that challenge. I'm going to do something great with blank. And that blank covers the X-Men, that blank covers Daredevil, books that for a time were canceled or were in reprint. And somebody would come in and say, wait a moment, I got an idea. Let's try this.
Yeah. Like Tom King on Vision.
Exactly.
Mr. Miracle, same thing.
Yeah. And that was one of my kind of sideball arguments for making a Quasar
Yeah,
book.
Exactly.
I was like, come on, you guys published Vision. And it was great.
Yes.
But there are a lot. Like when I was at DC, I desperately wanted. I had this whole like epic saga. You guys hear me still?
Yeah, we got you back.
Okay, sorry about that. I had this whole epic saga for New Gods.
Sure. It's everybody's epic saga, right? I mean, I don't mean to diminish, but I'm sure it would be fantastic.
Oh yeah, well, it was very much like it was.
We lose more artists that way.
I want to oh, he drop.
Whoa.
His
All right, let's
mic.
talk about him behind his back.
Well, yeah, we will. He needs to connect his mic or cam before he can end the stream. So, I mean, there's an interesting concept there. Like that is one of the things that, related to comic book storytelling. Like one of the there are the ongoings. There's the Fantastic Four. There's the X-Men. There's the Avengers. There's the Justice League and Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman, and you're gonna have those things, and they are part of the firmament of the big two kind of licensed things. And Aaron's back, but you need to keep their mic in. I don't know if you can hear me, but we're gonna put you in here at least as long as it says you can be in. All right.
Can you hear me? We have enough to do an AI thing, don't we?
We can.
Let's go on.
I'll pull him out a sec while he figures that out. But the concept is like there's so many interesting things, and I feel like more people should be given opportunities for the not as popular characters. So many interesting things can happen there. I mean, Gail Simone's Plastic Man.
Actually, yes, and Hal Baker's Plastic Man, taking nothing away from Gail's. Absolutely.
I'm just saying, like today, I feel like younger or not as superstarish. Like it feels like a lot of the really heavy hitters are being the ones given those side characters to go play with because it's like a bone.
Well, I mean, there's two reasons for that. The first is that the heavy hitter will say, I want to do Plastic Man. And they'll say, Gail, you could do whatever you want here. Thank you very much. We'd love to do your Plastic Man. Because they're not fools. The second is...
Testing.
We can hear you.
Okay, great.
Somebody comes in and says, usually from like another series from another publisher or something, and says... the character that you guys have always screwed up that I think I can fix is blank. And he makes his pitch, and it works. And they do it, and, it works. It doesn't work. Usually it does work. So the whole idea of going for the stuff that nobody has pulled off right lately,
Sure.
Great, go for it.
Aaron,
yeah. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I want to talk about something else though. I'm intrigued by, and I didn't read this at the time. It was not, but your Superboy run. So
yeah,
how was that? Like, I mean, I kind of have an idea. It's like, okay, we're canceling it. You can finish it up. Was that the pitch?
Yeah. I didn't pitch it at all. It was pitched
what
to
you have in
me.
common, right?
No.
So the last Superboy that was canceled, it was given to somebody, said, well, we're going to cancel it. Here, you want to write something, you can finish it up. And it was Jimmy Palmiotti, and he brought in Dan DiDio to help him co-write with it. And then that was the start of Dan at DC.
Oh, really?
Yep.
That's ironic.
Yep.
Because Dan was kind of the end of me at DC. No.
That's mentioned Thunder Agents, but yeah.
No, it was awesome. I really wanted to get more into writing.
And the other part is you had Jorge Jimenez on art here.
Oh,
and they had
before
John
he was
McCrae.
known. No, what was great about Jorge is that there were things at that point in his career where we were talking about storytelling beats.
Oh yeah.
That he just hadn't analyzed yet in his mind. And so being an artist and talking to him about what he's trying to capture there, that was absolutely so fun to communicate to another artist, like a way to like slow a story down or like get more of an impact with a certain gesture or something like that. I would actually draw out the scripts before I would write
Okay.
them.
Oh, that's interesting. I was curious about that because it's as someone who's was an artist primarily coming through. How,
Mhm.
so you gave him full on thumbnails or?
Yeah, yeah. And it's always kind of a jerk move for somebody to hand you the thumbnails for a book that you're drawing.
Well,
But
you think that?
I let them know this is how I'm seeing it. But like if you have your own vision, go for it. But it's just the way that I learned to communicate. Like I grew up with a phonics disability in reading and writing, and it's even composing an email can be just like an hour of slamming my head up against a wall. So in order to tell a story cohesively, I would have to draw it out first, and furthermore, I don't think like Jorge had an interpreter
Oh, sure.
at the time, but he was still getting used to it, used to English, I think. And I pray I'm not like misrepresenting him there, but so I feel like that was also a benefit in our relationship of like I could communicate visually, and he wouldn't have to necessarily worry so much about the nuance of the text.
Sure.
Um,
That's
uh,
fantastic.
but that was super fun because they just handed it to me to end the series, and it was so funny because there were, I think, 3 other writers on that series before me that all had very distinct ideas for what to do with this character, and oftentimes they would let the storylines of the other writers just hang in the wind. And so it was my job to like take all these like dangling threads and loom them into a blanket to end it all.
This
That
character
was the
doesn't
interesting
exist anymore.
challenge of that one. Yeah.
I think there's a freedom in finishing off a series that you don't get anywhere else. And that is, well, first of all, you can't screw up that badly. It's only going to run till issue 35 anyway.
Right.
So you have that pressure off, which is a legitimate pressure. We all feel it. But the second is like, well, if it's going to end, I can do almost anything.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't kill off the character unless that's been worked out in advance. And I did that once.
What do you do that with?
Vigilante.
Nice.
And we had him commit suicide.
Yeah, he's not dead anymore, though.
And yeah, I know. It's comics.
We're going to throw that bucket of water on that.
I mean, they brought Jor-El back. Come on. Okay? It's comics. Nobody dies. Okay, fine. But we had him kill himself. And I did do a whole page at the end about suicide and all that, because I have this whole background in child services, youth service delivery. And, and I wrote this whole thing, so that if people are having problems, you see this on TV a lot these days, here's some help maybe if you want it. And that's cool. But, if it wasn't the last issue, we couldn't have them do that. I mean, I guess you could do like 20 issues about how this guy killed himself, but that just doesn't sound like a very exciting story to
me. Sorry, I was just going through the comments and how Bill O'Donnell's over here just chiming in.
Yep. No, absolutely. Bill's a good friend, and
Bill's a great guy. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was distracted for a second because there's something I wanted to talk to Mike about, and you brought it up, and I forgot, so I'll have to go get it for another show. But when you're at a show, and I want to talk about this because you kind of have talked about your style and your the way you work. And for anybody who's not run into Aaron at a convention, first of all, you should. Second of all, it is an experience to watch him because I've watched you draw. I've sat around, I've watched you, but you don't even have to because I'm going to set the scene. So Aaron Kuder will show up at a convention. He will immediately find a chair, flip it over, put it on the table, and he has a board that he puts on top. So he has now made, a standing desk to draw the entire weekend, and it's a very fluid, organic style of drawing that you have developed. And again, but there's still the needling on the nose or the eye or whatever.
Right.
Is that something that, well, first of all, is that comfortable? Health? We talked earlier about being
just standing up all weekend.
Standing for 10 hours at a show,
I'm like
over a chair, and you talk. But like, what makes you do that? What is the physical exertion of the drawing?
Well, yes, standing for me is more comfortable at a convention. And that's twofold. It's one, like, the regular back problems. I don't like hunching over because I like my work like up in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
And and this is kind of a newer thing in the last 10 years or so. But I get pretty bad anxiety around people.
Okay.
Before I go to a convention. And one of the triggers for that is people standing above me and like hawking over me.
Oh yeah, I get that.
Sure.
And
well, you're also, that you don't have that problem when you stand because you're a pretty tall guy.
And I was a bartender for a long time, so the whole idea of having a countertop, like in between me and patron or fan, is just kind of natural for my what makes me comfortable in public these days.
So for you, a convention can be like a 3-day chalk talk.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And
I gotta see that.
It's interesting.
That's great.
It's interesting about it because like we're kind of touching on some themes here tonight, and I want to kind of dial it in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
This is this incredible medium where whether you chose to do it or not, you have impacted thousands and thousands of people. They have read your work. They have seen the things that you have drawn.
One or two, yeah.
That's not true.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt or be facetious. Yeah,
it is there. You've drawn some very, very important work, and when you set out and you felt you made a transition in your life because you didn't start out, you didn't like say, I'm graduating high school, I'm going to art school, and I'm gonna make or break it in comics. There was a transition, and when you transitioned here as a person with certain anxiety issues you've mentioned and other learning disabilities or learning challenges, you're a public person at this point.
Yeah.
Wasn't necessarily part of the calculation.
Right.
You are also a role model, whether you want to be or not.
Yeah. Well, whether I feel like anybody in my position should be or not.
Well, that's fair, but you are setting an example. That's fair.
We work in public, and we have to just accept that. Right. If you don't, and we live and die by the public. If nobody likes your stuff, you're not going to get any more work. It's just that simple. But if you want to just go the most commercial route, then nobody's going to care about your work. So you have to find that balance for yourself. That's hard.
True.
It's not easy, and it's constant. It doesn't go away.
Very true. Very true. I think, but correct me if I'm wrong here, Bob. And I feel like both prongs of the conversation are kind of going in this way of like talking about mental health issues in comics. Is that
Sure.
kind of where you were going with that?
Yeah, I mean, like it's something that we can't get away from as much as as much as we want to talk about, just the beauty and the majesty of it. It is made by people. Often, we've like I said, we've touched on it a bunch of times. People, even the consumers of this medium, are can be fragile, can be
even them.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying from the creator to the consumer, it's
yeah. We're all fragile in some ways. I think
there's also a backlash that we inherited. Up until about 2 generations ago, you couldn't talk about mental health. People didn't talk about mental health.
Yeah.
My political persuasion is such that I don't even like calling it mental health. It's part of health, but you'll lose the audience at that point. So now we have all of these issues that nobody's touched on, and some of them are very personal to us as individuals, and we want to touch upon them, and we do, and nobody's done it before, so we don't know how to do it right.
Right.
It's hard addressing those issues, but it's also our responsibility to acknowledge those issues and address them when necessary or possible.
Well, it's the same thing with it's a matter of language. I'm Gen X, and I'm of the generation that was raised in therapy, and so I became very comfortable at a young age talking about my feelings, talking about what sort of mental health issues or social issues I was having as I grew up, and sticking it to the man, and feeling validated in that idea.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't have any answers, but I do acknowledge that the questions are valid.
I'm not looking for answers. I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Is it something that you have conversations with younger creators who may seek you out, or even in just random conversation? Is this something that you're aware of? Because I know you're very serious about it, and like I said, as Mike said, you're a role model, but beyond that, you've done this for a while, so people will tend to look to see how did you figure it out, right? Whether
I'll let you know.
You have an
I'll
answer
let you know.
for them or not.
Yeah, no, I mean,
we have this myth in our heads that a solution is the same thing as an answer. And it's not.
Right.
They're different things.
No.
And we can seek to offer solutions that may or may not work for people under whatever their circumstances may be. We may inspire folks. It's great. And if it doesn't work, do no harm.
Right. I personally, I love having those conversations with younger aspiring artists. That was one of the, there's a, let me see. I was talking to an artist in at Emerald City earlier this month, and then 90% of our conversation was all about how to do stretches to keep your arm healthy.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I personally, whether it's keeping your posture correct, or whether it's talking about how to manage sleep, like those are the conversations I love having with other artists. It was funny, you were talking about all those DC get-togethers back in the day, and when I was at DC, they had like an artist summit, and they had somebody come in and was teaching about how to lay out panels and stuff like that. And in my head, that would have been a great lecture for people in art school. In my head, I was thinking at the time, I was like, nobody in this room, we were all living professionals.
You're all
Nobody
working for DC at this point.
Yeah, exactly. We got there. If I just kept thinking, like, if you need this lesson, you should not be in this room. And I don't mean that as like any sort of like gatekeeper sort of idea or anything like that.
No.
But like, I just felt like it was like kind of off pitch for the moment. And when it opened up to like a Q&A sort of thing, Jim Lee jumped in and was like, so how do people try to find the work-life balance? Like, anybody have any? And it just kind of opened it up to this kind of group discussion about how to be healthy and happy while you're an artist. And like, there's a ton of things that I'll give Jim Lee credit for in the realm of like his accomplishments as a comic book creator.
Mm-hmm.
But in my heart, like that was like okay, you're golden from here on, because not only are you asking to open it up, but I can, even at his level, he's still like looking for tricks to find that balance.
Yeah.
Somewhere around 1991 or 2, DC started a very short-lived program of having a major creator come in and talk about the craft for a few hours. And we opened it up to everybody in the field. You didn't have to just be working at DC. And we got this big-ass auditorium from Time magazine, and we had a wonderful time. And the first guy who did it, and also I think maybe the last guy, was Will Eisner.
Oh, wow.
And it was, of course, it was standing room only, and it was kind of cool because we could see all of our friends who were anywhere near New York, because they all came in for this, and some from the coast.
I live in Arkansas. I would have driven out for that.
I'm happy. and I mean, I would have gone there even if they weren't paying me to. Yeah. And everybody I talked with, and that was a lot of people afterwards, learned something from the experience. And it wasn't really a conversation. It was more of a lecture. And yes, Will Eisner has probably forgotten more about how to do brilliant comics than I'll ever know if I live to be 1,000.
Right.
But it was a wonderful experience, made all the better by the fact that everybody was there. It was a shared experience by all of us who were practicing, who were swimming in those waters. It's a wonderful event. So I'm not dismissive. I mean, I'm not dismissive of anything Jim does because I'm a fan of his. But quite aside from that, I'm not dismissive of the process. You just got to make it work.
Yeah. No. Well, in just Eisner, Alex Toth, like there are people that I would if I could have that selection of 8 people at a dinner table throughout time, those are some of the names. But I think in particular what I appreciated about Jim Lee's timing on that was that and I could be wrong, but I feel like he was really trying to get the younger artists that were just trying to find that, like they were just starting to work for DC. A lot of people in the room this was like their first year in comics. And so everything's up in the air. Like, they don't, until you're drawing it on a monthly basis, you don't know how hard it is. And I think he was using that moment to accentuate or underline the fact that your mental health and that work balance is important, and don't forget that.
The best part of this job for me is the mentoring function.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy going to conventions or store appearances or what have you, looking at people's stuff, talking with them, the wannabes, not established folks, and helping them move their career along a little bit. And every once in a while, I'd come to the point with an artist, I'd see them at consecutive conventions, and I'd say, well, now you're good enough to get work. But if you do, you're going to be chasing those monthly deadlines, and you're not going to be growing as fast. If you took a few more months and worked on this, and this, and then all the rest, because there's a domino effect, before you start having to chase those deadlines, you will start off at a much higher level. You will learn faster. You will continue to learn in your earliest years, even though you're chasing deadlines. And 9 out of 10 ignored that. They took the job because that's what they want, and I totally get that. But that 10th person, and there are several of them, went on to greatness.
Mm-hmm.
They went on to greatness. So
it's a hard balance, especially when you're hungry for it,
And if you're not hungry for it, what are you doing there in the first place?
Right.
So it's really difficult. It's also show business. It's also, rock and roll. Everybody who's in a garage isn't great, but there are enough great garage bands out there that if they all got work, rock and roll would just been quintupled. You'd have all of these terrific guitar players for every Eric Clapton out there or whomever. There's a dozen guys who never get out of the garage. I don't want to see that happen in comics. I have no doubt that it does. But
for sure. Yeah,
come in as great as you can be, and then get back.
Yeah, no. Always swing for the fences. There's two things that kind of hit me when I was first starting out. When I was drawing Legion Lost, my first DC gig. Tom DeFalco, who's just a treasure trove of inspiration to a young artist or writer. He's been in every rung of the ladder in comics. He said, he gave me the advice of, if you ever get that gut feeling that's not that what book or title that one of the big companies is offering to you, if you ever get that gut feeling that it's not a perfect fit, walk away.
Yeah.
Like, they'll offer you something else. Don't ever be afraid to walk away, because that's like, if they're offering you one thing, it's because they see the value in what you do.
Did you ever take that advice?
Oh yeah, many times. That's why I have not done anything with Batman. A couple covers, but
I mean, listen. I spent a couple hours going through your history, and I've noticed that.
Yeah, I like Batman as a character, as an inspiration to other fans. I don't like him as an influence on our billionaires.
This is why I love you, Aaron.
That is beautiful.
Because
And
I
I
mean,
will
we've
quote
got some
you
very
on that.
some really ham-fisted billionaires out there that would actually commission a car
I think that's part of what.
and go out on the streets. I mean, could you not see Jeff Bezos trying that at some point in some third world country? He has a Batman suit, and
So
he goes out and he tries to inflict justice on poor people.
I feel that way even more so about Tony Stark.
Oh, I can see. Yeah, I don't.
I think I've always felt that way about him.
All of those billionaire playboy types, whether that's the archetype of Batman or Tony Stark or even like, I don't know, James Bond. There's always been a disconnect for me. I've never seen it as.
But the blind lawyer's fine, right?
So, like, look at it this way: like, Indiana Jones is one of those heroic characters that connects with everybody. Why? Because his resources are a university. Like,
Right.
he's not the billionaire. He's not going to be able to call somebody up and be like, James, bring me my plane. He's going to call a buddy in Dubai that he used to
Hopefully he has a
fight
horse or a
Nazis
camel.
with. Yeah.
The thing about Tony Stark is that at some point, not fairly early on, the writers got hip enough to turn Tony's womanizing into a character flaw, into an indication of Tony's shortcomings as a human being. And I thought, given the mess that they were in, because Tony was rich and this munitions guy and was handsome and was getting laid left and right, at some point, you got to bring reality into it. And they said, no, if you're living that life, you're having some problems here, and maybe you should look at that. And I love that part of the character evolution of Tony Stark, and it continues.
Yeah. It's always interesting because there are characters that you, as somebody who's, spent my whole life in comics as a fan or professional, there are characters that I wasn't really into as a fan. Batman, Iron Man, definitely are two of those. But then you go back and you learn the history of them. You learn, like, at some point, Tony Stark, the writers in like the 80s tried to portray him as the womanizing was a flaw instead of a brag.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the cool thing about comics is, like, it's like I was inspired by Art Adams, which taught me in doing a deep dive on Art Adams, I found Michael Golden. We learn backwards through history.
Sure.
That's true.
Well, there was a great thing. Did you see the thing recently where somebody had discovered Art Adams and said, "Oh, you must have learned from J. Scott Campbell."
Right. Yeah, I saw that. I hope J. Scott Campbell's getting his royalty checks there, buddy.
That was hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah, but people don't know. I mean,
yeah, no.
Like we live in the institution of a nuance of a nuance of a nuance. Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I go to shows and people are like, "Oh, I love Daredevil," and only talk about the TV show,
right?
Or
right.
And I've had this like kind of kind of unfortunate shadow in my career of I'm working on a project that is being made into a movie soon. When I was on Green, like right from the beginning, what was it? the Green Lantern book, Green Lantern New Guardians. Yeah. The
nothing to
the
do
Green
with
Lantern. No, but it had just come out.
Right.
And by the time I was on Guardians of the Galaxy, the second movie was coming out.
Right.
And it's like those thank yous and the credits, I feel like are a personal middle finger to me every time.
I get that. Yeah. I understand that, and I love seeing those thank yous. I love seeing this because always there's a few of my friends there being
for sure
thanked, and
I just wish they came with royalty checks too.
Right. Well, that's a whole separate argument, and I can spend 3, 4, 5 weeks on that argument. But you always think like, well, what about that guy? What about that woman? What about those people? You use their work?
Yep.
Didn't you know that? Well, no, maybe they didn't, because it's not hard to add another name or two, but it is a lot harder to figure out who the hell created or started what in comics, because we're such a collaborative medium and we're sequentially collaborative.
Well, and especially on the art side these days.
Yeah.
Well,
comic art is just bad AI art to a lot of people. I mean, all art is free on the internet. All art is easily accessible, and now you can steal from a million people, and be able to express yourself.
See, the difference between the world before AI and now that we have AI is that
human souls. Is that what you're going?
Well, yeah, we can get there, but the first problem is before AI, if you were going to rip somebody off, you had to do it yourself. You had to know who you were ripping off.
And you got called out on it.
Just make all those choices for you. You don't even know who you're stealing from.
Yeah, just like Art Adams stealing from J. Scott Campbell. Yep.
I had a conversation with Jim Chung late last year, and I was saying, it's got to be, it's got to be interesting, to see Billy up, because if you haven't, spoilers for Agatha, but
right,
Wiccan is in it.
Yeah.
And Jim's co-creator of Wiccan, and I said it's got to be pretty cool to see him like really on a screen there, not just a little kid in a side WandaVision thing.
Mm-hmm.
And his response was, "Well, they really used Jamie McKelvey's costume design."
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's like, why couldn't you use the character that I designed? I did that. It's like the character Victorious in Fantastic Four.
Yep.
Dr. Doom's love interest.
Yes.
Or, at least as what was when I left it. I always get a kick when I see her on a cover or something like that. I'm like, yeah, I was a part of that.
That's awesome. I mean, and there's so many of these things. Like we're talking, we spend a lot of time, and we're going to wrap things up soon. But I really appreciate you spending the time. We've talked a lot about some serious things tonight. We don't have any answers when nobody's expecting that, but I think that it's important that we touch on the topics. But by the same token, it's what we keep coming back to. It's what we love. It's what moves our souls, even though it, rips them out.
Yeah, comics will break your heart, kid. Yeah,
if you let it.
Yep.
If you let it, it's true. Because if you let it break your heart, you're not pushing hard enough.
Or
you shouldn't let it break your heart. You should be angry.
Well, as a creator, I'm always in the sense of you get stuck and can't draw for a minute, or you don't find inspiration. The well dries up.
Sure.
And honestly, I feel like when that happens, I want to jump to a different medium. I don't mean like outside of comic books, but I mean like I want to pick up a Conti crayon and draw with that instead of like drawing in just fine ink, or get into watercolors. And like something I've been working on very slowly over the last like handful of years is auctioned for to benefit Alzheimer's research, and it's kind of turned into this therapy for me. I'm going to redraw all of the 1991 Marvel Universe trading cards.
Oh, awesome.
Which were like a huge part of what I loved about comics, is that like you can see their stats and you can read about their did you know sort of little factoids at the bottom, and it was all fun. But my dad hated them sitting around the house. So in honor of my dad, in memoriam to my dad, I am slowly working on redrawing those. But the point of that is that like it allows me to jump out of the comfortable mediums, like jump into watercolor, do a little bit more of like a Bill Sienkiewicz sort of like just messy, scratch it out sort of line work. So it's turned into this whole different element of cathartic therapy for me.
Do you find it as a useful therapy? Because when you go back to what you were struggling with, it is easier.
Well, that's the thing about therapy, is that it's if you're doing it right, it doesn't get easier.
That's true.
That's true.
I mean, you're uncovering layers of figuring out what's going on.
Yeah,
that's right. At the end of the day, we're all just onions.
Some are smellier than others. Yep. but we'll all make you cry.
All right. Well, while we have Aaron here, we're gonna wrap things up. But I want to just bring one thing to the screen here, and I just remind everybody that the Olympian is still available for backing on Kickstarter, and it is my first comic book. It is now funded completely, so it will happen. It will become
congrats.
existing. And I edited this book, so anybody who's watching hasn't backed it, you can go get it. You can go to acorncomics.com. It'll take you right to the thing. But the Olympian is still available. It's about halfway through. It's funded. We're past the first stretch goal. There's more coming. So
now, are you D Fish?
No. D is the artist. Paul is the writer. I edited it.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
Yeah,
that's
they
very
were both
cool.
Guests a few shows back. But now Bob has actually earned his editor's equity card. So congratulations.
So it will happen.
Wait. Editors have a guild? Editors have a union, but artists don't?
Yeah. Didn't you know that? It's because we all work for the man.
I'm gonna excuse me while I go flip my drawing table.
Listen, it is that would be my second union membership, so we're good.
Wait, I thought you were joking. There is actually an editor's
No,
okay.
No, I am joking.
But I am a union member.
Yeah. No, that's great. Good for you.
Oh no, we may start.
I wish I could.
It's
surely a call. Let's see if we can get this together.
That would be a dream.
No, absolutely. So that's happening. Mike and I are going to be at Ithacon next weekend.
Oh, nice. Is it next weekend?
It is next weekend. It's early this year.
Yeah, they have two.
we have a bunch of stuff to do. We're going to talk as soon as we see Ed and say, make sure Aaron's there for the 50th because that
Yeah.
is a lot of fun. We do it every year. Ed Cato, who is
Wait a
the
moment.
Wait, where are you guys located?
well, I'm in Baltimore and Mike's up in Connecticut.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
we kind of meet.
It's
we
in the
kinda
middle, ish.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
why wait? Bring Aaron out for the 49th and the 50th.
Yeah, sure, sounds good. Sounds fine with me.
It's hard enough to get me out for to go to the grocery store. I don't know if I could commit to. Oh well, being that I went to high school in Ithaca, it is home base.
Sure.
In a lot of
Where
ways.
did your dad teach? Which school did your dad teach?
He's out of Cornell.
Okay.
He was a health economics professor under the Sloan program.
Nice.
He basically taught grad students how to run HMOs and stuff like that. And try to instill upon them some morals too.
Oh, okay. We'll see.
Privatize.
That didn't sound good.
No. It sounds horrible, but no. Back in the day, like he actually did some stuff to try to get healthcare for all. Back when the first Clinton administration,
sure,
and stuff like that. And so, I mean, he had a soul. He was at Woodstock. So
was Mike.
Yeah, that's true.
We're going to talk about that soon too.
Having souls, or
no, him at Woodstock.
Oh yeah, were you at Woodstock as well?
I was at Woodstock. I was even on stage.
Are you familiar with the Abby Hoffman incident?
Yeah,
Mike was in it.
Oh wow.
I worked with Abby for 3 years, including at Woodstock. He and Jerry Rubin and Paul Krasner and a couple other guys and I went up there together. But they knew we were coming.
My dad was fresh out of high school and camped by the pond. And when the rains came in, his tent slipped all down the hill and ended up right next to the pond.
Yeah.
And he woke up to a bunch of naked bikers doing laps around the pond and then jumping in and skinny dipping. And so from a young guy from Champaign, Urbana, Illinois, he was a little shell shocked, I think.
I did some work in Champaign at University of Illinois. But
that's a great library program there.
Yeah. Well, Woodstock was fun. It was also 1,000 years ago.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Aaron, for being here. I'm going to let you go. It was really, really wonderful having you. Great conversation, and I look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Aaron, you look great.
I'm doing my personal best to impersonate a cue ball.
we just need to change the color to red, and it'll be better.
It kind of does look like my eye after an all-nighter.
Yeah,
just staring at the desk.
I get that. Totally get that. Aaron, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks,
and for
right
your
back
work.
at you.
All right.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend.
Oh, hey, Gene.
All right, Gene. Yeah, go check it out. It's we're stay tuned to the podcast because we're SquadCast. We are going to get deep into that sometime soon because it's up there. Anyway, thanks everybody for watching. Thanks Gene. Thanks Tom, Bill, Joe, everybody who's commented. Cherry. We love seeing you guys get involved in the conversation. We try to keep it as much as possible. We are going to be back a week from now. Tyler Chintanner, publisher of A Wave Blue World, is going to be here. We're going to get his take on the Diamond distribution and how that worked out and how that affects him as a small publisher. So hopefully he'll have a little bit more information. We're also going to talk about the really great work that they do at A Wave Blue World. Besides, just a tremendous, publishing company that really has their heart in the right place. What else, Mike?
I didn't mention Milton Caniff. We'll hold it for next week.
Okay, I'm good with that. All right, everybody, take it easy, and we will see you next week. Thanks so much for being here, and stay tuned to popculturesquad.com, and follow us on socials, like this podcast, and make sure you subscribe so you can find out when we go live.
Thank you very much for indulging us once again. We look forward to seeing you next week.
All right.
This has been a production of the Pop Culture Squad Network. PopCultureSquad.com. How do you nerd?